think of ourselves as the most powerful beings in the universe, it's unsettling to discover that we're wrong. Time has come to see the world as it is.
Can we pull back the veil of static and reach into the source of all being? Behind this curtain lies this random pattern generator. You will be responsible for an escalation that will destroy everything.
In this episode, I will read more journal entries. March 6th, 2016. This morning I came out of my kitchen to find that a statue I had on top of my fridge had been knocked off and into the kitchen sink, and it wasn't anywhere near the edge. Also, a Torchy's Tacos menu I sticky-tacked to the fridge was also torn off and was crumpled on the floor. It was stuck on there real good and obviously had to be torn down violently. One of my spirits claimed to have done it. The statue that was knocked off was called the Murder of Crows from Bioshock Infinite, which is a bottle in the shape of a crow. They said that it was taken down because a deity I've been working against for quite some time. I call her Matriarchs, but through research and information from my spirits I found she is also called Babbed, and surely many other names. And apparently one of her envoys was using the object as a conduit into my sacred space, since the crow was one of her trademark symbols. They say that a negative spirit of some sort had associated itself with the cute little devil dude on the Torchy's Tacos menu, so that had to come down. March 16th, 2016. What they think of us. There has been a lot of progress in our culture regarding gender relations, suffrage, civil rights, etc., but they still see our culture as being patriarchal and misogynistic. They disagree with the conceit that the patriarchal age was just a natural evolution of humans. They see it as an abusive abomination brought on by hateful patriarchal gods that still influence our culture whether we even believe in them or not. The horrible effects of this can be seen not only in obvious things like inequality in the workplace and the abuses of the porn industry, but also in more subtle things like men who harass other men about how many times they've scored and such. Think about it. If you're a guy who judges other guys and how many times they've gotten laid, you are a misogynist. Also, the fact that so many attractive women in this culture are emotionally damaged, awful people, is because of what this misogynistic culture does to an attractive girl as she grows up, being constantly reinforced as an object to be won, rather than an individualized, self-empowered person. Another effect of all this is the fact that people in our culture generally see touching as sexual. Some people are even afraid to get massages because they see it as sexual. People don't touch and hold enough in our culture, and it boils up under our skin and causes emotional problems and repressions. Finally, this patriarchal dominion also leads to homophobia and a general distrust of unconventional sexualities. Thankfully, things have been changing for the better in this regard. The patriarchy is dying. Oh, and I wrote that years ago, and it's been dying even more ever since, thank God. July 25th, 2016. Here's a little rundown of some books I've read recently. Revelations, Alien Contact and Human Deception by Jacques Vallée. A very informed and intelligent window into how complex and entrenched the UFO disinformation-misinformation campaign is, though Vallée is convinced that there is something real and strange behind the phenomenon. The entire Roswell affair may have been fabricated by the military as a red herring, for instance. Unfortunately, Vallée seems to have been quite pissed off when he wrote this, as he's extremely cruel and negative towards spiritual people and other investigators. Recommended. Next book, Sight Unseen, Science, UFO Invisibility, and Transgenic Beings by Bud Hopkins and Carol Rainey. This one focuses on the UFO's ability to be invisible and also on the many stories of human-non-human hybrid projects. This one offers many fascinating cases, but is unfortunately too focused on a nuts and bolts explanation for UFOs and is permeated by a sense of paranoia and perception of all aliens as threats. Still recommended, though. The next one, Real Encounters, Different Dimensions, and Otherworldly Beings by Brad Steiger and Sherry Hansen Steiger. A laughable collection of anything and everything paranormal without any oversight for obvious bullshit stories. There's even material on the Slenderman, an internet creation for Christ's sake. There is, even more disturbingly, a very religious Christian bent to it, undoubtedly due to Reverend Sherry Steiger, including reams of cheeseball angel stories and Catholic pablum obviously fabricated to scare people in the church. Trash, not recommended. Yeah, Steiger seems like a nice guy, but he's, tacky. Next one, Ultra-Terrestrial Contact, a Paranormal Investigator's Explorations into the Hidden Abduction Epidemic by Philip J. Brogno. Based on 30 years of research into the phenomenon, this book contains many fascinating accounts, mostly detailing the giant triangular UFO sightings in the Hudson River area in the early 1980s. He also, like Vallée, touches on apparent cover-ups and misinformation campaigns, like MJ-12 and the infamous Strawberry Ice Cream documentary debacle. Recommended. September 28th, 2016. Not too long ago, I noticed a strange, completely round black circle on the tip of my pinky finger. I tried to scrape it off, but it wouldn't budge. Assuming that it was a bit of Sharpie ink, I waited for it to fade and even scrubbed it, but nothing would remove it. I got a bit worried, thinking that may be skin cancer of some sort. I had a dream where I wiped the thing off my finger, and when I woke up, the mysterious, tenacious little black dot was gone. I still have no idea what the hell that was. December 26, 2016 at 10:10 p.m. I'm on vacation visiting my family, and today we drove out to Orlando to visit the family of an old friend of my brother's. When we were almost there, I decided to listen to a randomized playlist. A certain song reminded me of the Grant Morrison comic series The Invisibles, which I am rereading at this point, and it put me in a very magical mood, and I decided to make my own playlist soundtrack for it. Within the 25 minutes it took to get there, about 7 of the 9 songs I heard fit the bill entirely to a rather mind-blowing degree. Later, on the way back, I listened to the same playlist during the 1 hour and 15-minute trip and only discovered 4 tracks that worked for the soundtrack out of about 50 songs, as I was skipping the ones that didn't work this time. Pretty crazy. At my brother's friend's house, I found the most perfect Y-shaped stick, great for dowsing. I picked it up and felt it pull my body around and rather violently drag me toward a median with bushes and trees. It magnetically snapped right to the base of a tree, and then I noticed a water irrigation system right under the stick. Huh, well that worked, I thought. And now, the news.
What the hell in God's name is going down here?
A woman in southern Vancouver claims she was abducted by a Nordic-type alien and that he experimented on her. The Langford resident says she was in her bedroom when the alleged abduction took place. I found myself awake in an area that wasn't my room, the anonymous woman explained. I felt incredibly groggy and hazy, like I was dealing with a sedative, she continued. The Canadian said the unfamiliar room was well lit, but that there were no obvious light sources. The walls and floor had a matte gray-blue color. There was a counter in front of me with some black rod-like tools and needles and some strange storage compartments. She was reportedly sitting on a bed-like bench that appeared to be fused to the floor while observing a few mechanical arm-like tools sticking out of the ceiling. That's when the woman claims the alien showed up. He was facing away from me, preparing something on the counter. He wore a skin-tight blue jumpsuit with a black belt around the waist, and he wore black boots. He had short, light blonde hair. Then, according to the witness, the experiment started. He was speaking English. He said, "Hello," she added. He said he was from around the area of Antares. He told me that he had to do some work on me and that it will sting a bit, but that he would try his best not to make it hurt. She described the man's eyes as gray-blue with vertical slit pupils. He grabbed a small white sheet with many holes in it and placed it on my exposed back. It stuck there, between my right shoulder and my spine. He grabbed this device with several small needles that matched up with the holes in the device and poked my back through the sheet. It stung when the device was inserted, but the procedure was quick. He came up to me and told me that what he will do next may hurt, but it is necessary for me. He grabbed a mechanical arm from the ceiling and brought it towards where I was seated. He gently took my left hand with his and held it so my index finger and thumb were spread. Grabbing the mechanical arm, the black head of it changed shape to form 2 long needles about 1 centimeter apart. He told me once again that he was sorry if this will hurt and that it will sting. I watched as the 2 needles entered the space between my index finger and thumb. Seconds after the device being in my hand, I felt something similar to an electric shock after it was removed from my hand, she recalled. As a result, she claims 2 reddish marks showed up on her hand before blacking out and waking up back in her bedroom. Purportedly, these marks, which she photographed, remained with her for 2 weeks before going away. They were very numb to the touch and stung. I woke in my bed feeling very heavy with a slight headache, she said. She also provided a drawing of the alleged being. Ufologists believe Nordic aliens are a group of benevolent humanoid extraterrestrials coming from the Pleiades star cluster, also known as Seven Sisters. A woman claims she has been repeatedly abused during 4 years of alleged unidentified creature visitations at her Brooklyn home. The anonymous woman, a Spanish-speaking New Yorker, says that she has also seen these beings taking babies from other women. Like 4 or 5, I don't know how they do it. I'm an adult woman, she wrote on the report. I have been abused and raped once. The eyewitness added that these entities don't want to leave her apartment and that they usually come at night, keeping her in a state of terror by what appears to be some sort of hologram-like imagery. They scare me with snakes, throw me from my bed, animals, crocodiles, so many things, she said about the experience at the Mutual UFO Network. She also claims to see white UFOs everywhere she goes. They are all over the place, in the business stores, all over. The Brooklyn resident goes on to say that these creatures are most likely coming from a different dimension and are able to show up at will, adding that their faces look human but continuously change into different shapes. But, she continues, what really bothered her was the rape and the constant stalking. I felt everything, and they constantly follow me everywhere. They don't leave me alone. The woman who claims to be in possession of a video showing these purported beings says she would like to get in touch with other people who have had a similar experience. I am depressed because they don't let me alone. I don't know what will happen, she said. A California man on Wednesday said he saw a judge changing shape in West Los Angeles. The man, whose name was omitted in the report, says he was attending a court proceeding for a traffic violation when he observed the judge turn into a reptile. I was standing about 10 to 15 feet from the judge, he explained. He momentarily changed shape into a reptilian, then changed back into a human form. The event, which the man claims to have taken about 5 to 10 seconds, was reportedly not noticed by the other 15 people present in the courtroom, including officers and reporters. The Los Angeles resident also maintains that his case was rescheduled. "The next time I was to go in front of that judge, she recused herself and would not see me again," he added to the report submitted to MUFON. "The judge did not want to speak to me after this, but had the bailiff tell me to return at the next scheduled court date. I never saw the judge again in my return visits to the court. The judge," he said, "was dressed in a black robe and her face was the only body part he noticed to have changed shape. I did not see her hands at the event as they were on the desk and were blocked by the podium where I stood. No words were spoken during the shape change." The man says he is sure about what he saw, and that he had only told 2 people about the incident. "I saw what I saw. I will never forget it," he says. In Orland Park, Illinois, on September 24, 1951, 24-year-old steelworker Harrison E. Bailey was walking through the woods at 11 a.m. when he felt a cramping and burning sensation on his neck. When he turned around, he saw a gray object that he assumed was a whirlwind. His next conscious memory was of seeing a silver-gray oval like a water tank across the road on the edge of a meadow. Bailey, feeling paralyzed, then saw 2 strange men wearing what looked like green-tinted face shields at the craft's window. The men asked where he was from and where he was going. When the paralysis wore off, Bailey walked away, glancing back once at the strange ship. A short while later, Bailey felt more cramping throughout his body and fatigue like he had never felt before. Suddenly it was late afternoon. Though he had told no one of the incident, Bailey, a black man, was confronted the next day by a group of white men who yelled at him. "Hey you," they said, "did we see you come out of a flying saucer yesterday?" Shocked by the question, Bailey said no. 14 years passed before Bailey talked openly about this experience and his suspicion that it somehow was responsible for his chronic health problems. In 1966, he became a preacher, but he did not seek help for what he called his flying saucer disease until 1975, when under hypnosis details of that day a quarter of a century before emerged. Bailey recalled having been swarmed in the woods by dozens of frog-like creatures that walked. They were just 1.5 feet tall and covered with smooth brown striped skin. They had little hands and only 3 toes on their feet. The creatures had slit mouths and prominent eyes that curled around the sides of their heads. Suddenly the creatures clustered around him, jumping up to touch his hips and upper body. They seemed to talk to one another in high-pitched cries and sounded like wild ducks. All during this time, the creatures were accompanied by numerous tiny bugs, as Bailey called them, that scurried about in an erratic manner. They had dark round shells 1 inch in diameter. Bailey was running to try to escape this alien horde when he came across the bus-sized object just off the road. He remembered awakening inside the craft and speculated that the frog-like creatures must have bit him or otherwise put him to sleep. 2 beings, each 5 feet tall, then approached Bailey inside the ship. He avoided looking at them too closely, but recalled seeing flattened and bizarre features beneath their tinted shields. Before being released, Bailey was given a message telepathically. They meant no harm and desired to land and communicate with humankind. They also wanted him to be a spokesman for them. Bailey would again be visited by these aliens in 1977 and 1978. On October 1st, 1954, in Dhubri, India, a woman reported to police she had seen a luminous disc leaving a long trail. It landed in a field, then took off again. On October 1st, 1954, at 1300 hours, in Blonsny, France, 2 bricklayers, Sebastiani and Borato, approached a cigar-shaped object 3 meters long, 80 centimeters wide, which took off from the ground with a whistling sound. The pointed section of the object was yellow, the rest brown. From the forepart, 2 appendages extended to the ground. On October 1st, 1954, at 1600 hours, in Bry, France, a man and his dog were paralyzed as a luminous white object dived toward them and climbed again. On October 1st, 1954, at 1815 hours, in Resson-sur-Matz, France, a farmer saw a white craft on field. Flattened grass was later found at the site. On October 1st, 1954, at 1900 hours, in Jussey, France, 2 young men saw a luminous white disc moving in the sky. It dived to the ground, and 2 men, described as being very tall and dressed in white, emerged from it and made gestures. The witnesses ran away in fear. On October 1st, 1954, at 2000 hours, at La Roulerie, France, near Saint-Jean-d'Allenger, 2 businessmen, Estier and Philippieu, who were driving back from Royan, saw a little man crossing the road in front of their car. Having stopped, they saw the figure disappear into the woods. On October 1st, 1954, at 2200 hours, at Branchet-near-Luhans, France, coming home at night, Gilbert Prudent saw a lighted object on the side of the road. It had a flat section and a sort of mushroom on top. As he approached it, the object became dark and took off vertically with a soft whistling sound. On October 1st, 1954, at 2200 hours, at Bergerac, France, returning home, fireman Jean Dufy, 26, saw an oval light in the sky and thought it was a shooting star. Later he was alarmed when his yard seemed to be ablaze. Rushing out again, he saw a disc rise from the ground with a whistling sound. It flew off, became luminous again, and took off at fantastic speed. A neighbor, Jean Lebon, 61, saw the disc 3 meters in diameter, resting on 3 legs in the yard. And now some strange events from Hungary. At Bata, fiery cartwheels seen rumbling noisily along the hilltops, August 1940. In Budapest, fires broke out in boys' presence and furniture moved, 1921, UFOs seen. 10th June 1947. Poet Laszlo Benjamin saw UFO emitting in almost blinding white light over mountain near city, 20th November 1967. At Kecskemét, near Budapest, poltergeist outbreak, 29th of July to 31st of July, and then also 13th November 1921. At Und, teacher photographed UFO, 27th October 1954. Now in Iceland, 70 miles southeast of Iceland, officers and men of HMS Hillary saw sea monster with neck 15 to 30 feet long, head was black and glossy, it also had triangular dorsal fin, May 1917. At Lake Kleifarvatn, bird hunters saw two creatures bigger than horses emerge from lake. They moved like dogs but swam like seals and left footprints larger than horses and split into three, November 1984. In Sorar, poltergeist activity with movement of furniture and smashing crockery, 18th March to mid-April 1964. At Vopnefjorfur, two fishermen saw black humped sea monster which surfaced 5 times, 13th February 1963. Now going to India, in Calcutta, poltergeist outbreak around July 1906. Boeing 747 coming into land was paced by round, bright pink neon UFO, 16th July 1977. Huge bright UFO surrounded by colored lights slowly crossed the city on 3 nights in November 1986. In Chenganur, Kerala, iron statue of Indian goddess menstruates. In Kudappa, Madras, poltergeist outbreak around April 1935. At Digyan, Maharashtra, poltergeist outbreak 1967. In Dhulburi, Assam, woman saw luminous plate land in field and take off again, 1st October 1954. Near Islampur town, Bihar, UFO hovered over school roof and drew up large sections of the roof, 12th July 1979. Northern Kashmir, workers on mountain sheep farm heard and saw 4-foot hairy yeti. One boy hit it with a fire pot when it attacked him, late January 1987. In Karol Bagh, near New Delhi, falls of miscellaneous small items in courtyard, 1963 to 1968. In Lucknow, poltergeist activity with smashing of crockery and other household goods, and clothes and bedding catching fire. The house owner's wife was burnt and died, 1975 to 76. In Madras, luminous ball appeared, moving fast, and hit coconut tree, exploding like a stick of dynamite, autumn 1958. Woman saw 8-foot humanoid creature with shiny skin in the moonlight, and then a yellow-red object rising into the sky, 1st July 1976.
That was a public service announcement designed to scare the shit out of you.
March 4th, 2017. Well, I was spiritually attacked last night. While I was invoked, I felt a very negative presence on me. I instinctively left the room and closed my bedroom door behind me. My guides then pulled me toward my dowsing rod. That would be the one same Y-shaped stick that I had gotten in the parking lot in my last account, and I had since affixed a stone to the end of the thing with a single branch. I then was directed to point the tip of the rod first at the upper left corner of the doorway, then upper right. Another voice began speaking through me, reciting some sort of incantation in another language as I touched the rod to each point. It then directed me to the lower right corner of the doorway and then the lower left before pulling my arms to point it up at the upper center of the door, then down to the floor, then up to the middle of the door, and finally back down to the floor. The voice speaking through me the whole time would falter at times, but then begin fluently continuing the enchantment until I finished the operation. The only thing I can compare the language coming out of me to is the black speech of Tolkien's invention, the guttural, frightening language the orcs sometimes speak. I felt that the attacking being was still on me, so I began to visualize blasts of white light, which often fends off attackers, but it continued to revolve around me like a planet in fast motion. Interestingly enough, the thing that finally chased the bastard off was when I invoked the monster Songbird from Bioshock Infinite. As a side note, fictional characters can actually be very effective magical tools and aids, as attested by other occultists like Grant Morrison and Lon Milo Duquette. As soon as that beast came spiritually crashing down into the room, the invader zipped away very quickly. March 10th, 2017. I was attacked again last night. This time it wasn't as intense as before. I was able to dispel it by creating a sphere of light around myself and expanding it outward until the thing was gone. I asked my guide about it, and he said that I've been attacked because of a magic working with Huegomancy I started quite a while ago, but still haven't finished, even though I've been working on it just about every day. I don't do it every day, simply because it would be too much of a drain on me. Until that circle is complete, I'm in a state of greater vulnerability than usual, as the working involves attacking some serious powers of the lower variety.
He was abducted by aliens earlier this afternoon. That little girl got lost under the bed and she went into an alternate dimension.
I'm going to read part 2 of the Nevada UFO Conference and Missing Time at Area 51 from the book Does It Rain in Other Dimensions by Mike Oram. Transcript of Mike Oram's tape regression session, Wednesday, 6th July of 05. The hypnotist will be represented by the letter D. Subject will be M for Mike, questioner F for Fran. Transcript starts after D's initial process to relax Mike into the deeper level of consciousness. D set the scene for Mike. You are back on the dirt road at Area 51. You have been to the gate, and now you are driving back along the dirt road. You see the great pickup truck behind you. What happened next? F comments. Mike could see a purple flower beside the car on the driver's side. He remembered stopping in real time to photograph a cactus at the start of the dirt track and seeing this tiny purple flower beside it. As he watched the one by the car, it grew to around 6 feet, and he commented that the petals looked like arms and feet. M comments. Later in the regression, there will be mention of the 6-foot-tall flower standing outside my driver's door, but in the regression, while looking at the real-time event, I had stopped the car a short way along the Groom Lake Road to take a photo of a Joshua tree, and, in this deeper level of consciousness, I noticed a small white and purple flower growing on the desert floor. I had not remembered this in a conscious state, but now found myself looking down at this flower and having a very strange feeling. The head of the flower seemed to envelop me, and I was swooped up in its essence. I could not understand why this tiny flower was having such a strange effect on me, and it took my whole attention away from that moment in time. I almost felt embarrassed to mention under regression that this was happening. It was just a flower, I thought to myself. What is happening here? Eventually, I pulled myself away from this powerful image and continued my journey. What I believe happened here is that this was just an ordinary desert flower, but because of an event that happened afterwards, which was now in my deeper consciousness, seeing that flower then triggered that event in my mind and made a connection. As mentioned earlier, one of the anomalies that we consciously remembered was how on earth the gray military truck could possibly have disappeared in the 15 seconds that it took me to get out of the car. Under the regression, we heard the noise and the tire went flat, but before I could get out of the car, we were surrounded by several armed military personnel who ordered us out of the car. They were dressed in khaki and wore red berets. We were taken to the rear of our car, where a truck with a strange device on the back was backed up to ours. The truck held a long, tubular device which seemed to have 2 wheels attached. At first, I thought this was a cannon. This was not the case because when I managed to see the other side of the machine, there was no wheel device there. It was only on one side and seemed to consist of 3 raised sections that looked like a wheel. In this deeper consciousness, I said that there were 3 magnetic coils inside this wheel, and that this device was known as a magnetic pulse generator. I had never heard of such a thing, but this was so clear in my mind that I just had to say it. I said that it could create a portal and that it was a mobile portal creator. F. How did they pick up on you? M. I think they had technology that tells them who I am. I sensed here that they had technology, possibly with detectors along the Groom Lake Road, which somehow looked into my mind and retrieved information about my communication with the Space Brothers. They then knew that I was a contactee, and they simply wanted to know what information I had regarding my space friends and what I may have known about any future or past events. F. Do you know, can you see, or could you ask how I came by the triangle and the bruises? M. Manhandling was the bruises. F. In what way was I manhandled? M. Let's just say resisting. F. I was resisting? M. Yes. Resisting what? Being taken. Do you know how or where we were taken and for what purpose? I think with me it was to find out why I was there. Okay, and with me? You were with me. How were we taken? With this machine that created the portal. And we were forced to step through the portal? We were told to. We had no choice, not with guns pointing at you. The portal was created in front of my eyes and it was about 7 feet tall and just a couple of inches off the ground. It was an oval shape and very thin. It was unusual because you could see the desert around it as normal, but the portal was like wavy lines of energy, or you could say like water rippling. Where did we go? Into a military establishment, which was where? Underground. We simply stepped into this energy and immediately found ourselves in this large underground room. This was actually quite confusing, because one minute you were standing in the desert and the next somewhere completely different. Can you describe it? Just very busy, hectic. A large space, small space? We are in a largest room full of stuff. People. When you say stuff, equipment. Equipment? Can you describe any of the equipment? Do you know what its purpose was? What it was used for? Well, it certainly doesn't look like the alien equipment. It doesn't? Too dense, too here and now. Do you have any idea what any of it was used for? Programming. I'm getting programming. Uh-huh. Machines to, sort of, try and find out about consciousness. What happened to us there? I've just picked up that they've been told that I must be put back. Who told them? I don't know where it is coming from. This was incredibly clear in my mind, and I do not understand what was going on here, but there was a presence I detected very strongly, and this intelligence was surrounding all the other minds that were in the room. What I'm trying to say is that the mind of this being was so vast that it overshadowed all the other minds, so I could pick this up really strongly. It obviously was not human, of that I can be sure, and it was saying that I must not be harmed and that I must be put back in the same place I was taken. Why, I do not know. Have you any idea how long you were there? 1 hour. Do you know, were we tampered with in any way? They were information gathering. They knew, they somehow knew, I don't know how, perhaps through these machines that I was one of them. One of whom? One of the brothers, referring to those he calls the Space Brothers. So they wanted to find out as much as they could about you? Yes. But they were stopped? They had somehow been told no harm must come to me. And you have no idea why? No. When we went through the portal, what actually happened next? Where did we end up? Well, you literally stepped through and you're in the room. In the room where we were being kept? Yes. And can you see clearly? Do you know exactly what happened when we got into the room? What happened to you and what happened to me? Were we together? They weren't too, and this isn't an insult, they weren't too interested in you, but obviously you had to be kept placid. But the thing is that you know stuff about me. I don't know who this higher authority is that told them I had to be put back and no harm must come to me. I don't know where that is coming from. Could it be an off-world authority? Well, that's what I'm feeling. So did they ask you questions, or did they put you on a machine, or... I can see you lying down at one point, but I mean, you're not undressed or anything like that. It wasn't that sort of operation. Was I awake? At this point, you're subdued, but at one point you obviously struggled. Do you know if I was frightened, or was I mad? A bit of both, but you knew I was there, so a part of you knew that no harm could come to you. And what did they do to you? Can you remember? They were trying to find out why I was in the area and was something going to happen. I think they knew that there would be a ship somewhere. So did they try to find out just by questioning? I think they've got machines that can go into your mind. There were machines all around the walls of this large room, and military men were sitting at these machines. Most of them were not concerned about me at all, and were probably quite used to these portal arrivals. They had their own agendas. Around 6 or 8 men were responsible for us. These machines, I again felt very strongly, were to do with consciousness and messing around with the mind, but in what capacity I'm not sure. Was it that process they were told to stop? They weren't told to stop, but they were told that I had to be put back. How many personnel were in the room? There were quite a few milling about, but a lot of them weren't to do with us. Was it a largish room? Yes. And were there any other humans undergoing... No, not where we were. But there were elsewhere in the complex? There could have been. Were the people in the room with us totally terrestrial? I'm just scanning around. Yes. What was the feeling of their energy? What sort of people were they? Were they sinister? Not sinister, they've got their own agenda. Let's just say they don't know any better. Right, so were they fairly dispassionate about what they were doing? Let's just say that they don't warm to you. Let's just say that they've not actually they're not in touch with their divine self. Have they themselves been tampered with in any way? They're just under orders and they're controlled, as you are in military forces. You don't question. In his book Psychic Warrior, David Morehouse, one of the CIA's remote viewing espionage team, says of the military and those involved in the intelligence community, even the most seemingly sinister of those in the intelligence community do what they do because of their unfaltering belief in the mission. The mission is to protect our nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It is this passion that often drives them beyond the moral and ethical expectations of duty. F. Were they American or M? American, yes. There may have been an English general. May have been. For some reason I was picking up that there was an English general in the vicinity. I did not see him, but in this heightened mind state that I was in, I could detect his energy. F. So would you get the feeling, or do you know, if it was an international... mainly American, I think, in this part. I mean, I can't speak for the whole establishment. And is it a clandestine to that extent that the American government would be unaware of what is going on? I think they are briefed up to a point, but I think like on a need-to-know basis. If they can be kept in ignorance, they will be. This machine they used, do you, in the consciousness that you're in now, do you know if it can be activated anywhere and open a portal just to that place or to... It's movable, isn't it? It's on the back of a truck. It's like a magnetic generator, a magnetic pulse generator. Would it always open a portal just to that base? It's a portable portal. Just to the base? Well, no, they could do it anywhere. No. Is it a portal just to access the base, or can it be programmed? It can be programmed. To access anything they want to access? More or less. Do you know, what did I say it was? A magnetic pulse generator? A magnetic pulse generator, right, look that up. A cursory internet search revealed that there are indeed such devices. Pulsed magnets fall into two general classes, non-destructive and destructive. They are or can be used for a variety of procedures, including breaking up kidney stones, lymph virus, microbe, fungi, and parasite elimination, effectively managing pain, sleep disorders, inflammation, and improving joint flexibility. Weather control and destroying sensitive and complex electronic systems, from computers and microprocessors to, theoretically, the electronic systems of nuclear or electric power plants, banks, trains, or even a simple telephone switchboard. The most flexible pulsed magnets to date are shaped pulse magnets, in which the magnetic field shape can be specified to meet the particular needs of a given experiment. HARP stands for High Frequency Active Aural Research Program, which is an investigation project to understand, simulate, and control ionospheric processes that might alter the performance of communication and surveillance systems. The project started in 1993 and will last at least until 2013. Many scientists were worried that the HARP antennas could be used as a weapon. A small group of American physicists aired complaints in scientific journals in the mid-1990s, and these concerns were amplified by Bernard Eastlund, a physicist who developed some of the concepts behind HARP in the late 1980s. In September 1995, a book entitled Angels Don't Play This Harp, Advances in Tesla Technology by Nick Magickal Jr. claimed that the project in its present stage could be used for geophysical warfare. It now appears that the technology behind HARP has many uses. Extracts from a paper reporting on the current status of HARP, HARP's Covert Agendas, the Big Picture by John Quinn of Newshawk Incorporated, written in 1998. It is becoming very apparent that the radar systems are picking up electromagnetic perturbances which not only don't correlate to observed actual weather conditions, but display totally unnatural formations like perfect circles, often concentric, perfectly straight lines, etc. The same phenomenon, often in conjunction with tremendous and historically unheard of rainstorms, has also been observed in Western Australia, where the concentric electromagnetic energy pulses accompanying the fronts have been so severe as to totally knock out the power grids in the region, exactly what happened in Auckland, New Zealand earlier this year, when the entire heart of the city was without power for months after their electrical grid was literally fried by these EM pulse waves. It bears repeating here that some scientists believe that HARP, especially at its current extraordinary levels of power, is quite capable of generating such highly advanced esoteric phenomena as gravity waves. The ability to implement interdimensional time-bending, distortion, shifting, rifting, and the like would be along the same lines. More and more, the emerging picture of HARP is that of an extremely severe and very disturbing threat to our well-being here on planet Earth. Currently, perhaps one of the very biggest threats technologically. This really seems to be their big gun, capable of being applied in nearly every imaginable and exceptionally undesirable way. And more complete list of primary intended uses of HARP now reads: enhancement of or interface with communications, as well as development of new types of radio transmissions, manipulation of weather patterns, weapons-related, psychological, physical, disablement, and mind control uses, earth-penetrating tomography, an X-ray-like function which can reveal, for example, the existence of underground installations as well as oil or mineral deposits, detection of electromagnetic seismic activity which may precede earthquakes and triggering of such activity, generation of gravitic waves, interdimensional time portals, and other highly esoteric relativistic phenomenon. Pushing the envelope in terms of pumping electromagnetic energy into the ionosphere just to see what happens. Drawing astronomical amounts of electrical power from the ionosphere. On 14th of February 2006, I emailed Alexander Frolov, head of the Faraday Lab in St. Petersburg, Russia. This is my email content. Dear Mr. Frolov, I realize you must be a very busy person, but I am trying to find the answer to a puzzle occasioned by a personal experience and thought you may well be able to provide me with an answer. The question is it theoretically possible for a magnetic pulse generator to be used to create a portal from one place to another? His response dated 0938, his time on 15th February 2006 was, Dear Sir, it is not always clear if unfamiliar names are masculine or feminine, hence him referring to Fran as Sir. We work to get confirmation of the conception about relation between aether density and time rate. It seems to be quite workable idea. Future results can be more interesting. Best regards, Alexander V. Frolov. Faraday Lab was founded on the 14th of March 2001, registered as a scientific research company. CEO and owner Alexander V. Frolov. Their main work is in R&D in the field of alternative fuelless power engineering and advanced propulsion systems for aerospace technologies, for example, electrogravities and other reactionless propulsion systems, development of the new materials for the technologies, experimenting with permanent magnet motor generators, and others. Sometime after we had sent this book to the publisher, we had the good fortune and pleasure to meet and spend some time with Paola Harris, the internationally acclaimed Italian investigative journalist. She told us of interviews she had done with Dan Burish, the microbiologist who worked on black projects dealing with extraterrestrial races and technologies. In particular, he worked with one extraterrestrial entity called J-Rod, who was housed at Area 51. Burish told Paola about a device they had in the early 2000s that created a time-space portal through which they sent J-Rod home. His drawing of this device is reproduced in the Italian magazine Area 51, for which Paola writes, You can imagine how pleased we were to learn this, as it made Mike's recall of the portable device all the more likely. Continued. F. How did we come back? M. Through the portal. We came back through the portal? Yes, they put us back in the car. In our four-wheeled vehicle? Yes, and by the time we had come round, they had gone. And how were we subdued to be in that state? I mean, does the portal itself do it, or the machine will do it? The machine will do it? I think they might have some handheld implement. I'm not too sure. One of the military men had a small device on his belt that seemed to point at us, and we would be put into this subdued state. They ordered us back into our car and used this device to subdue us. Once this was done, it would then take around 10 minutes for us to come back to our full conscious state. This is why, to our conscious memory, when we got out of the car in supposedly 15 seconds, they were nowhere to be seen, whereas it actually took us 10 minutes. There was some way that they suppressed our memories? Yes, that may be arranged as you go through the portal. There may be several functions to it. Right, earlier in this regression, you felt that you saw beside the car a 6-foot flower with purple leaves tinged with white. In the consciousness that you're in now, what do you think that was? Can you see more clearly? It was a space brother. It was a space brother? Yes. So they arrived while we were still... The flower was there when we came back. Did the military see it? No. But it was one of your space brothers? Yes. What happened from the point when we came back? The space brother was there? We took a while to come around. Right, and what did he do? And the flower was there, but I think I'm seeing that on a different level. Right. It wasn't there physically. But they were aware of you? So was it the beginning of the telepathic communication? It must have been, and that's why I drove to Medlin Ranch, just to be out of the way of that main track. Because you'd been telepathically told to do that? Yes, it wouldn't have been advisable for them to have appeared on that track, and that's why we drove on the metal rim to Medlin Ranch. So this is where the memory of this flower actually happened. Why I saw one of my space brothers as a flower, I'm not certain, but as we were slowly coming round in the front of the car, I started to see a large flower just outside the window of my front driver's door. I described it as white and purple, similar to the one I saw earlier when I was taking a photo of the Joshua tree. The confusing thing about this imagery was that I described 2 large leaves where the hands would normally be and 2 large leaves where the feet would be. Then I had a total realization that this was not a flower at all, but that it was one of my space brothers, and he was telling me to drive to Medlin Ranch as they wanted to meet me and it would be much safer there. That is why I was desperate to get to Medlin Ranch to change the tire and rip the tire to shreds in the process. And it was daylight when you got there? Yes. So how did we lose that other segment of time? It was lost when they arrived. We got the puncture at around 13:30, and we were in the underground establishment for around 1 hour. Under regression, I said that when they brought us back, it was 14:30, so when we arrived at Medlin Ranch, it was around 14:50, and not the 15:50 that we were aware of in our conscious mind. In our conscious mind, we arrived at 15:50, and I said to Fran, "Look, it's 10 to 4, it's getting dark, we have to get this tire changed." In actuality, under regression, I stated that when we arrived, it was blue sky, with some fluffy white clouds, and that it was 14:50. This is because, as you will see, I spent 1 hour there talking to my space brothers. They were not 2 ranchers, and the other one was not a little 10-year-old boy. They were my space brothers, and that smaller ET was apparently on a training mission with them. He was learning certain techniques, and he held Fran in a kind of stasis, as that was one of the things he could do. That is why, in my conscious memory, I was puzzled as to why he was just standing there staring at Fran, and also why I thought he was a bit odd. The oddness was his energy, as I had not detected this type of energy before. While they were communicating with you? Yes, when I looked up and saw this light. This, again while under regression, was a very powerful image. I was bending down, undoing the bolts of the wheel, when all of a sudden I turned to look over my shoulder, and there in front of me was a blazing light. I watched this for a while, trying to work out what was going on. Then out of the light walked my 2 space brothers, Telos and Zainab, along with a little boy who was in fact a small cute ET with a round orange face, as orange as in orange. He had a bald head and large round eyes. He had 3 stocky fingers in each hand, which came to a rounded end. He was also wearing a one-piece ski suit similar to the brothers and had a very nice innocent energy. The shorter one of the 2, who finished tightening the last 2 wheel nuts for me, called me Madame and felt very comfortable. Do you think he really did help me with the wheel? Yes. My back was starting to ache, and so I asked Fran to tighten the last 2 bolts in the wheel. She was, at this point, kneeling down and tightening the final bolt, while I was kneeling down beside her. That is when I started to look over my shoulder and noticed the light, and soon after that, Zainab offered his help to Fran. Was that one of the 2 you met later on craft? Yes. Am I allowed to know which one it was? Zainab. Is he in the physical? In the way that they appeared to us at the time, as an older man and a younger man? Would that be a representation of a discrepancy in their ages and their real state? Was one older and one younger? It's not got the same importance, if that's the right word. So why would they choose to appear like that? Just to look normal, to make us feel comfortable? That they were just American ranchers and a little boy? They are very much aware of intruding too much into our lives, as we have to live our life here under earthly conditions and laws. Our soul will incarnate here for various reasons, and there is such a thing as karma, although this is not worked through our lives as we sometimes believe it is. It is not eye for an eye or tooth for a tooth. It just doesn't work like that. It's much more subtle and much more complex. It is energy that is disturbed in such a way that that energy must at some point in the future come back into balance, and we work this out through our higher self. However much we may feel we can handle a certain situation waking consciousness, in this case meeting with the Space Brothers, it will have a tremendous impact on our lives, and then we will have to try and bring that into our reality here and try to cope on an everyday level. I can assure you this is not easy and is a decision that one should make with extreme caution. By working with our higher self, or in another part of our consciousness, the meetings can happen with as little conscious intrusion into our lives as possible. There will, I might add, be a time in the not-too-distant future when open fraternization with our Space Brothers will become the norm. Until then, we will have to accept that this is the way they work. There is always a part of the experience made available that will give you the necessary realization that something went on here. This, of course, would explain what we thought at the time was a lack of obvious questions on their part. When they first arrived, Telos said, "Looks like we have arrived too late." In my conscious mind, I believed he was meaning about being too late to help change the tire. But in the deeper consciousness of the regression, it was made very plain to me that what he meant was that they did not realize I was in the area and they arrived too late to stop me being taken by the military. Telos actually told me that he cannot keep his eye on me at all time, and that I have to stop putting myself in dangerous situations like this. The sickness, which I will touch upon later in this chapter, and which happened outside the caravan, was, he told me, a temporary cleansing for what the military had done when they were probing my mind. F. When you felt that Zaynab was looking in the back of our car in the boot, and you were slightly suspicious of him looking at your photography equipment, what was he doing, do you think? I think it was just out of interest. Would they have checked to see if we were safe, that the car was safe? I think they would have known that. You being sick later was a form of cleansing? It was the start of it, yes. From what? Cleansing from what? Possibly from probing my mind. And later, much later in the whole Nevada experience when we were both sick, was that a further part of the cleansing? Yes. Was that occasioned by them or by Adrian DeVere? Long pause. They are different races, and they have different agendas, but there's a lot of brotherly communication, if I can use that word, and they, Adrian DeVere's contacts, have got certain equipment available, and it was agreed that would be satisfactory. Would it have happened, would we have been cleansed if Adrian DeVere hadn't been there? They knew they'd be there. So it was prearranged, it would have happened. Was this prearranged, the whole thing, Area 51, everything? Well, it's not necessarily prearranged, but in sort of where their mind is, it can all be set in motion. Because they are beyond time? Yes. Fran then asked me about the truck that the ranchers had arrived in, and I replied that there was no truck. This was all done for our benefit, and that is why we were always confused as to why we never saw the truck arrive. It was just there, and we could never explain the fact. Even though we saw them drive away in the truck in this deeper state of consciousness, they actually walked back into the light, and the light just flew away and was gone from sight in a matter of seconds. As for Fran never seeing the little boy, he obviously put her into stasis almost from the moment they arrived. M. The connection was made when we changed the wheel. F. Connection with what? With your brothers? Yes, the little boy for some reason had just put you on hold. And who was the little boy? Was he part of your race or... No, I'm just trying to find out why he was with them. He's totally different. I'm not too sure. Presumably he was with your brothers? He was a different energy, and that's why I was feeling he was odd. But he's okay. He was with them. He might have been... Actually, he's from another race, but he may have been, like, being schooled. But was he indeed a little boy? No. So that was even for you. He's an off-worlder. But he put a disguise on for you? Well, I was looking at him with earthly consciousness at the time, but I knew he was odd. In the regression, we then moved on to where I was feeling sick in the mobile home. I have gone outside and am standing at the side of the mobile home. I am being sick and looking up at this really bright light that is in the sky directly above me. It is a huge white light, and somewhere inside this light I can see a red light. It's moonlight, I'm being sick, there's a light above me, no, I'm in the light. In this expanded consciousness, I actually saw myself being lifted up into the air in a beam that was directed down to me from this light. My legs were wide apart, my head had dropped back, and my arms were down to my sides, and I looked just like a lifeless dummy being lifted up. D. You are in the light. What can you see? Tell us what you can see in the light. M. I'm in a room. There are other people here. They're not from Earth. They're from other star systems. They've got silver suits on. Oh, I know them. They're my space brothers. The words here do not do justice to what I actually felt at that moment. The realization that I was with my space brothers was just simply overwhelming. There was also a massive revelation for me here that hit me hard on an emotional level. Telos went on to explain that he was the tiger that would come into my room as a child and would stand and watch me from the bottom of my bed. He also told me that it was he that came to my room in London and left the calling card, and also that it was he that met me on the marshes after my friends had floated off in the boat and made sure that I got to the main road to safety. This is what I mean by brotherly love. I am incarnate here on Earth, helping in my own small way to open people's minds to who they really are in preparation for the coming vibrational changes. It is not easy living here, especially when you have memories of your homeland. A place of such peace and universal love. A place where there is no such thing as violence. A place of freedom, whether in the world around you or freedom of your own mind. A mind that can greatly embrace the universe. Telos does not look after me in a fatherly way. It is more a brotherly connection. A connection that is bonded on a very deep and personal level. Fran then asked me if I knew where they were from, and for some unknown reason I replied, R67. Fran then noted the following. At this point, the fingers on Mike's right hand began to move. Each finger moving almost as if playing an invisible keyboard, with the whole hand arching and curving at times. He had done this once in the past, in my presence, when he felt he was being given a communication whilst on a deep, relaxed state, and on that occasion, some of the fingers, and especially the thumb, bent backwards over the back of the hand in a way that would normally be impossible. I asked him now why he was moving his hand, and he replied that it was a form of communication, that he was downloading information and telling them things, a two-way process that kept him in touch with his homeland and updated them on how he was doing here. And there's a little note on this. On page 75 of The Convoluted Universe, Book 1 by Dolores Cannon, a client under hypnotic regression also makes hand movements. Quote, after a few seconds of suggestions, she relaxed and began making very graceful hand motions. Why are you making these motions? It's a greeting. Who are you greeting? A being. She continued with hand motions almost reverently, and indicated that the being in front of her was making the same motions. Mike comments, some years ago I visited a local hypnotherapist over an 8-week period to look into some of my experiences. He was not first in ET contact, but was willing to help. At the start of the 3rd session, my hand started to move, as explained above, and it got to the point that as soon as I was relaxed enough, the movement would start and would last the entire session. It had reached a point where that was all I was doing. I told him while I was in this deeper state that I was communicating with my space brothers. I stopped the sessions after that as I felt acutely embarrassed because this movement lasted almost the entire 2-hour session. F. Why are you moving your hand? M. Communication. With whom? My space brothers. Downloading. Downloading what? Information. It's two-way. I'm telling them things as well. They're giving me information, trying to help me while I'm here. Comforting you? Sort of, yes. May we know their names? Telos and Zainab. Zainab. Z-E-N-A-P. But I mean, that's not how they spell it. No. Telos, Zainab, Zainab. Repeating the names as if trying to get the pronunciation correct. Are these beings, do they have gender as we do? Yes, they are physical but not dense physical. So what gender are they? These two are male. And they are friends? Well, we'd say we are brothers, but not like we know brothers here. Do you know why it is necessary for you to be given this information, or why this information exchange is taking place? Partly keeping me in touch with my homeland, so in a way it's like a telephone call to a friend asking how things are. So it's catching you up on the news? Partly. And what's the rest of it? Why I'm here, how things are going. So you are, like, reporting in? Partly. Are they giving you instructions or more information? Instructions come from above. We're on equal footing here. We're connected. You're connected in what way? In our minds. So this information is coming mentally? Yes. Do you know if you will be able to access this information consciously, or is there no need? Sighs. They're giving me a sort of a rose, and that is very important. Rose? Type of rose. Type of pink rose, but it's not a rose. It's a rose from their frequency. A rose from their frequency? It's like a rose. It's a flower, definitely a flower. Yes. What happens to that rose in this frequency? It's in my heart. It's in the heart. It's an emotional, it's a love. It's a connection. It's a love connection. For your benefit? For my benefit, yes, for being here. A short time after these regressions, I was talking to a friend on the telephone and happened to mention this etheric pink rose experience. My friend is a longtime member of the organization the White Eagle Lodge, where she is involved as a healer and teacher of astrology. White Eagle is the name given by a discarnate spirit teacher of great dignity who gave his message through the instrumentality of Grace Cook from the 1930s right through to the mid-1970s. The White Eagle Lodge is now a very well-established center for healing and spiritual teaching and has sister lodges based in many countries around the world. My friend did not comment much at that time, but 2 days later I received a large brown envelope through the post, together with a note explaining the contents. Apparently White Eagle had said many things about this etheric pink rose, and enclosed in the envelope were just a selection of them. I cannot tell you how pleased I was to receive these writings from my friend. As his experience in my regression was so profound and strange, it made me wonder if a very wild imagination had come into play, because I had never heard of such a thing as an etheric pink rose being placed within a person's heart. In the regression, I was sitting and talking to Telos and Zainab when Telos spread out the palm of his hand, and I watched in amazement as a pink rose materialized in his hand. A beautiful, perfect pink rose. This had been formed out of the ether, as I said in my regression. Telos then leant forward and placed the rose inside my heart. I looked down and saw his hand and the rose go through my physical body and into my heart center. The love that emanated from him and the feeling that impacted my body from this rose was incredible. I could have died at that moment and would have been the happiest person in the universe. That is how I felt for that moment in time. The rose, I sensed at this deeper level, was put there to increase the connection that we already had between us. It was strengthening the link. I felt for the troubled times ahead. It was a way of saying, look, we will always be here with you. We are only a vibration away, and this connection is just to reaffirm that you will never be alone. White Eagle and the meaning of the rose, quote, can you believe that all souls at heart long for harmony, and so long for God? That is because all souls belong to God. Each one of you here tonight is a child of God. Within your heart is the Christ child. You are yourself a potential Christ child. The Christ child is symbolized by the rose because of its fragrance and beauty. The old type of rose had to be protected by thorns, which caused anyone to handle the rose with great care. The rose then is the symbol of the sweet Christ love in the human heart, and this must be handled with great care. It can be a little prickly, as you are all finding out. You must learn to be tender with the heart of another, so that neither you nor he will be hurt. The rose is perfect in form and opens its petals to the sun. The human heart is perfectly formed in God's own image and will always, always respond to the sunlight of truth, to the sunlight of God. Stella Polaris, February, March, 1956, pages 65-66. Another one, quote, "Beloved brethren, will you hold in your mind the symbol of the soft pink rose, the symbol of the mother love, divine love? Create the form of the rose in your mind, inhaling its fragrance, feeling the softness of its petals, and looking to the center and seeing there the sparkly jewel of the Christ Spirit. This should release in you a beautiful spiritual power. This is a symbol of your own heart center or chakra. To create this rose, you have to create beautiful thoughts. You have to think softly, gently, radiantly, and the form of the rose comes on the etheric plane, because you are using etheric matter, which is so much more easily molded by thought. When you on earth can create a perfect and beautiful flower, you are making a resting place, or a cave, for the birth of Christ, for in that heart center, in that flower, which your mind has created, the perfect jewel, the flashing jewel of spirit rests." Stella Polaris, February to March 1973. Beloved brother, try to visualize as you read these words a delicate pink rose, perfect in form and color, opening its petals to the spiritual sun which falls upon it. Try to become in rapport with that rose, inhale the spiritual perfume, absorb the delicacy of its life, its aura. It will raise you far above the earth into a world of silence, peace, love, and truth. This rose is the symbol of the Christ life, the Christ sweetness and purity of life untainted by the earth. Withdraw into the consciousness of the rose as often as you can. Its fragrance will permeate your being and it will help you live within the infinite spirit of love. Stella Polaris, August, September 1972. Now from the Temple of the Rose, quote, "We visualize the symbol of the cross of light encircled by light. At its center we see a perfect pink rose. Let us inhale sweet perfume, and as we do so, receive renewed inspiration and courage to continue our endeavor to overcome all selfishness in the pull of materialism and to work for brotherly love among men. We pray for understanding of our brothers' problems and for the vision to work together side by side with them in greater harmony." Another one, "As we meditate, the rose grows in size and we are unfolded in its fragrance. The temple of the rose, its walls are translucent, shining with rose-tinted light. We are surrounded by our spirit brethren and supported by their love. All things work together for him who loves God." Written by Grace Cook, Stella Polaris, July 1977. I knew at this point that I would soon be returning back to Earth, and more importantly back to the mobile home in Fran. I then felt quite strongly in my mind to walk over to an oval window and look out. I saw the roof of the mobile home way below, and in this altered state of consciousness I could see right through the roof as though it wasn't there and into the interior. I saw Fran sitting on the edge of the bed. She was motionless and her head was down, and there was an overwhelming feeling of being lost, isolated, and fear. Delos told me at this point that Fran had gotten herself into an awful panic, and she had been outside the mobile home in the cold searching for me for quite a while and had finally come to the realization that I was not there. She went back inside the mobile home and was at a loss to what to do. It was at this point, he said, that they had to put her into a state of suspended animation for her own safety. Shortly after this, I returned back down the beam of light to the little alien. I have to get back to Fran. D, you can come back to Fran whenever you like. Fran's in the caravan. I'm somewhere else. After this regression, Fran agreed that this is exactly how she felt and that she was sitting on the edge of the bed in quite a state of anxiety when I finally came back in. Fran then continued the questioning. F, are you aware in any detail that you could share with us of your purpose? To raise consciousness and to witness. In the first chapter of this book, you may remember at the age of 4, I told my mother that something very important was going to happen on this planet, and this was to do with the consciousness of all life forms, including the planet Earth. A shift in consciousness or awareness will become available for those who have the eyes to see what is going on around them, or whose minds are, at the very least, open enough to see the true reality on this planet. Not the reality that is conditioned and laid out before us, that is controlled through the media, businesses, religion, schools, banks, etc., but the reality of who we really are and what we are truly capable of achieving. We are reaching a point in our evolution that will have a profound impact on our lives and our future existence, and it is truly up to each and every one of us as individual spiritual beings to play our part. The future that is decided for you will be chosen by none other than yourself. We are not just physical bodies, machines that are somehow separate from God, the Source. We are, in fact, multidimensional beings who are the Source. We do not need to rely on some external force to connect us with the Divine, because we are the Divine. We have our own personal space within the Divine, and we are in control of our own destiny. There is no heaven or hell, no purgatory or original sin. We simply do not need to carry such baggage. We create our own heaven and hell through the state of our own minds. There are places on this earth that would seem like hell to the people that have to exist there, and I'm sure that there are some people who have created their own little bit of heaven. There are planes of existence beyond this three-dimensional world of ours that would certainly feel like heaven because in those places you would be much more in touch with your inner divine self and would be free to experience life on a deeper level than you currently can. You would then be fulfilling your true destiny. To have any chance of moving your consciousness to this higher level, we have to think outside the box. We have to see the illusion of what is happening around us right now. It does not have to be like this, but to have any hope of change, we have to make the effort to change ourselves. We think we are free, but we are not. We are trapped inside a bubble of false security. The system is set up to keep our minds so busy that all we can do is think about survival, financial survival. It takes all our energy, and there is no energy left in the pot to actually take time out and quietly think, is this right for me? We have no energy left to even think about trying to change the way we lead our lives. Every time someone stops to think about where they are heading and decides to make a conscious change for the better, it will have an impact somewhere on someone else, and they will then think about questioning what we never questioned and make a change also in their lives. The future is bright, but to be in our rightful place, we have to make the effort to change. F. Is this your first time here? M. Long pause and a few sighs. I may not be coming back. Been here too long. I've done my stint. I can go home. Do you know how you'll go home? When I decide to leave. Then they'll come for you? Not necessarily. They'll be there if I change form. If you die in this frequency, your consciousness would immediately be back home. I would be in my original form. Which is as they are? Yes. Is the lifespan on your home world longer than ours? Much longer, yes. So did you, in fact, just take... Were you already partway through your lifespan there when you chose to come here? I don't understand. Did you already have a conscious existence there before you came to this planet? It's my homeland. This is something I had to do. Where is your homeland? That's for no one to know. But you know, I know.
Science can explain everything if we look hard enough.
Shut up, science bitch.
Nothing is true. Everything is real. Not only is he like ruining my life, but with all this God shit that he's into, he could be ruining my afterlife.
It's a sort of interdimensional vagina that somehow appears. I can interact with it.
Fabric of the entire universe could be torn apart.
I know my mind is changing. I'm already too far gone to know what to do.
Nothing is true. Nothing is true. Nothing is true. Everything is real.